Hi, this is Leo Knight in Tellurico. It's September 18th, 2014. Last time I spoke to you, it was just before the Cardinal Grand Cross and the spring eclipse season. That was back in March. And now we're up against another eclipse season coming up this autumn. You remember when I spoke to you last time, I told you that the Cardinal Grand Cross and the eclipses, along with Uranus square Pluto, were really going to make a big shift and change in our world. And I remember telling you that the next 18 months, from back then in March, were going to be like really powerful months of enormous change in our personal lives and in the world. Well, you can see that that's begun to happen. Back around the time of the Cardinal Cross and just after, there were immense happenings in the world. There was the changes in Ukraine and Russia. There was this group ISIS, Islamic State, which has come into our world. There was the war between Hamas, the Palestinians, and Israel that happened, and where there was the beginning of the Ebola virus coming into our world, or at least us knowing about it. So there's a lot of shifts and a lot of changes happening in the greater world, and that was just the beginning. There's going to be more changes and more shifts. Now I know it sounds like, oh my God, that sounds like all negative stuff. Well, it just seems that way on the surface, and a lot of it is very disturbing. But I remember back in the 60s when things were changing a lot too. A lot of the things that were happening seemed really horrible, like the war in Vietnam that was going on, the riots in the streets. People's lives were getting turned upside down, but at the same time, things were opening up. New waves of energy were coming in that were fresh and clean, and like civil rights, rights for African Americans, women's rights, the ending of the war, the throwing out of a corrupt president, the changing of people's attitudes toward the world that they were in. Well, the same things are happening again. You can see more rights for our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. You can see things are coming back out in the open around African Americans, like happened in Ferguson, Missouri. And more and more people are awakening to the things that are not what they want in this world, so that we can make changes to bring ourselves into this Aquarian age that's right on our doorstep. In my estimation, the Aquarian age is going to start at the very end, December of 2020. So the 2020s, in my estimation, will be the time when we really start moving into this new Aquarian age. Let's look at a big picture real quick before we look at this autumn eclipse season. So the Pisces age started about 2,000 years ago, around the birth of Christ, when the Roman Empire was on the earth. And since then, we've been developing this new age, and a lot of what the new age has been about is the birth and the growth of organized religion after the birth of Christ. So Muhammad and Islam and Christ and Christianity, organized religions. At the same time, there's been one empire after another after the Roman Empire. What we've been trying to integrate into our consciousness is more of like what some of these spiritual people mean to us on a deeper level, not the organized religion so much, but what their message was for us all. That's what we're all trying to integrate on some level as we move into this new age, this new Aquarian age. So the 2,000 years, the cusp was begun of the new age, just the very cusp. The transition began like in 1781 when the planet Uranus was discovered, and both the French Revolution and the American Revolution were circling in our lives around that time. And those revolutions are important to what the Aquarian age is, because it's the liberation of people from kings and queens, from governments, from dictators, from presidents, from anything that's going to tell us what kind of world we want to develop. So there's a liberation of humanity happened at that time, and a message around equality of all human beings, and that everybody is different and they all need to fit into the world that we're developing. That's Aquarian age, and that was beginning with the French and the American Revolution. Now let's go years from there. The three transformational planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They were discovered after 1781, so they represent like messages from the universe coming down to our Earth, telling us there's more to we humans than there has been so far. Messages about we can move beyond just rules, regulations, commandments, and guilt, and connect with something much greater for ourselves as human beings on this earth. So in 1965 and 66, two of those three transformational planets, Uranus and Pluto, made a conjunction with one another. That brought on the 60s revolution. In 1992 to 1994, Uranus and Neptune, again two of those three transformational planets, made a conjunction. And that brought on the internet revolution. That's very powerful in our world. So you can see when these transformational planets make aspect to one another, it means a great wave of change coming into our world. So now that's happening again. Uranus and Pluto, when they were conjunct, brought on the 60s revolution. And now, from 2012 to 2015, Uranus and Pluto make the first aspect, major aspect with one another since that 60s revolution. So what began in the 60s, the changes that began then, they're ready to go to a whole nother level of change. And now, because we're so close to the actual Aquarian age at the end of 2020, what happens now is even more powerful than in the 60s because we're closer to getting our job done of moving into an Aquarian age. So let's go back to this year now. Cardinal Grand Cross happens in the spring. That's an extremely powerful configuration, planetary configuration, and it had Uranus and Pluto. Remember those two planets that are bringing on all this transformation now? They were part of that Grand Cross, and eclipses were happening at the same time. This is all in April. So March, April, May were a big turning point when things were going to shift a lot for our world and in our personal lives. The Grand Cross, however, actually extended all the way out till early July. So now the Grand Cross is gone, but now we move into the autumn eclipse season and it begins to form again. It's not going to go all the way into a Grand Cross, which is 4 planets that are cardinal signs making a cross. Now it's going to be 3 planets making like a triangle, which is a T-square, almost as powerful as a Grand Cross. And Uranus and Pluto will be back in that formation again, and that formation will be a part of the eclipse. So the eclipse will be happening with Uranus and Pluto and making a T-square formation. So a very powerful autumn is coming up. So let's say that we got a big wave with the Grand Cross and the spring eclipse. Now we're going to get another wave taking us a whole nother level forward in our transformational growth, both on a global scale and on a personal level. So remember I just said about how these things happen with the Islamic State and with Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia. There's a real shifting around the way the globe is going to look and the way the power structure in the globe is going to be. If we're going to move into a diversity and unity, equality world, where all the nations and all the peoples of the world are considered equal, and where diversity and unity is our way of living, the way that the globe is now and the way that the power structure now is has to change. So you can see that that's happening in Russia and Ukraine. You can see the borders and the boundaries are changing there. When you look at the Middle East, and you even take it back a couple of years when the Arab Spring started, and now with the Islamic State going in there, now you may not agree with the way that it's changing, but in the bigger picture, what's more important is not the way that it's changing right now, but the fact that the old boundaries and the old borders of what we've come to know as what our world looks like, that's what's changing. In fact, today as I speak, Scotland is voting on whether they want to stay with the British, in the British Isles, or whether they want to have their own country. I know in Catalonia in Spain, they're going through a similar process. So the borders, the boundaries, the world as we know it is all changing. So it's not good to focus on, oh my God, it's the Islamic State and what are they going to do to our world? As ruthless and as brutal as they may be, the thing to look at is our world is changing, the boundaries and borders are changing, and we're moving into a whole new world, and that world eventually is going to be one of diversity and unity. So there's hope in the bigger picture for the long term, no matter what things look like right now. So as we move into this autumn eclipse season, and we move into a whole nother set of like changes, we're going to be taken out of our normal balance, and we're going to be put into, if things are like this, kind of flat line, people don't make change. When they're taken out of their normal rhythm and out of their normal comfort zone, that's when they're kind of like off balance a little bit. And when we're off balance is when we're more apt to be in the rhythm of change. So you may be taken out of your normal comfort zone, out of your normal rhythm, But that's only so that you can be ready and moving with change. So that's one of the things that the eclipses do in eclipse season. Of course, we got a T-square as part of the eclipse season with Uranus and Pluto, and so even more powerful than a normal eclipse season. So what it does is it takes us out of our normal rhythm, and it causes breakdowns of that which is not right for our world anymore, and breakthroughs into new way of thinking, new ways of looking at things, and new ways of being in our lives. So breakdowns and breakthroughs happen during eclipse seasons. I had written in my blog, which I'll give you the information of at the end of this video. As I've been writing in my blog, we are moving into like a new season of our lives since the Cardinal Grand Cross happened. By new season, I mean it's like there's, you almost get a feeling, just like when the seasons change, everything kind of changes around you. Well, now the same kind of thing is happening in our individual lives and in the global scale. It's like there's real, like, that's an old chapter of my life, close the door on that. There's a new chapter of my life beginning, doors opening into that. And so that happened after the Grand Cross. So we're all kind of sitting in this new chapter of our lives, both globally and in our personal lives. Well, as we get into the autumn eclipse season, any things you're holding on to still that are part of the old chapter of your life, things that you've begun to let go of, but it's not easy to totally let go of it, you'll get some help to let go even more. So think of that when the eclipse season is coming in now, is that if there's anything that you're still holding on to that's part of an old chapter and not the new chapter of your life, you're going to get help to let it go, and it's best to let it go. Now, sometimes that feels insecure when we let go of things that we're used to, but oftentimes, I'm sure you know, those of you who've made transformational changes before, if you don't let go, then you end up being in a stuck kind of a life. And when you do let go, things start opening up that you didn't even imagine they would open up so wonderfully, but they do open up once you start letting go. So you're in a new chapter of your life. We as a globe are in a new chapter of our life. And the autumn eclipse season is going to help us to go even further into this new chapter of our lives. Now, everything doesn't always feel like, oh my God, I feel great that I'm in this new chapter of life. Sometimes you might have gone through a divorce, or somebody died, or you lost your job, and it feels very painful to let go of the old chapter of your life. But you got to believe, because this is what's happening for all of us on a deeper level. We're all being brought to a more deeper place in our souls and to more authenticity of who we are and why we came here to the earth. And sometimes those old jobs, those old relationships, they kind of kept us away. They might have kept us comfortable and feeling content, but they might also have not really ignited the flame of our own authenticity and our real sense of purpose and being here on the earth. And maybe some of those relationships were really kind of toxic and dysfunctional, even though they felt secure. And so now as you let them go, you're going to open up to a much better wave of relationships coming into your life. People that will appreciate you more. People that you really feel more connected to in your heart and your soul. So even though sometimes it doesn't feel good, some of the changes that are coming, ultimately it is for the best. We as human beings, we get programmed. We get programmed by our families, our parents. We get programmed by society that we're supposed to be a certain way, when the truth of who we really are is much deeper than that. So you got an opportunity now to let go of a lot of the programming of who you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to measure up to, so that you can now become more naturally who you are meant to be. And you'll gain more and more sense of satisfaction in life as you embrace that side of life more and more. Now, the actual eclipse season for the autumn is beginning, I'm making this on the 18th of September. It's going to begin next Monday at the autumn equinox. Now, this is a more powerful autumn equinox than usual, because on the same day of the autumn equinox, Pluto will be changing directions. Pluto's a Scorpio planet. So Pluto's a very powerful, powerful planet that represents the power at the core of things, like the power at the core of an atom, for instance. I don't think it's a mere coincidence that plutonium is something that is used for atomic bombs. It represents what Pluto is, which is power at the core of things. So with Pluto changing directions on the same day as the autumn equinox, it's going to be different than the usual autumn equinox. Usually the autumn equinox feels like a gentle sunset time of year, when yang and light energies are equally balanced with dark and yin energies. And the yin energies are beginning to get stronger. So that's why I say it's more like sunset. The sun's coming down for the year here in the northern hemisphere. It usually feels very gentle. But with Pluto changing directions on the autumn equinox, it could feel like a much more powerful, much more intense transition into autumn than usual. And it also means that with Pluto being there as the signature of the autumn equinox, because it's changing directions, that it represents what the whole autumn is going to be like. The whole autumn is going to be very powerful and a very intense autumn. And it's going to take us out of our normal rhythms of life. So when you look at the greater world and you see what's going on with Islamic State, and you see what's going on in Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and Russia, you can expect those places and maybe other ones to have more intensity around what's going on there. There's also going to be shifts over this 18-month period, which started last March and will last all the way till next autumn of 2015, that there's going to be shifts around our economy. The economy also is not a just and fair economy in this world. And I know those of you that pay attention realize that the economy is based on greed. The markets are definitely based on greed. And there's a lot of have and have-nots in this world, and that can't be what's right for how we run our world. Like whoever is the meanest or the toughest or the most competitive is the one that gets the most, and other people are left out. That doesn't seem like right. So in an Aquarian age, that's all going to be changed. But it can't be changed unless the current structure that runs our world comes down. So you can expect big changes to happen in the economy before autumn of 2016, or maybe we can go, or autumn of 2050. Maybe we can even go into 2016 just a little, but I think that something will happen with a crash in the stock market between now and then, and realize that it means that we need to change the economic system. The empire that runs the world is a military economic empire. Even President Eisenhower spoke to the United States when he was leaving office as president, saying, beware that the military-industrial complex that's getting stronger in our world is going to take away our freedoms and our rights as citizens and human beings in our country. Well, that military economic structure is bigger than it was when he was in. It's much bigger than it was when he was president. So that military economic structure is the new kings and queens in the world in a way. It's that which takes away our freedom and our rights to be in charge of and responsible for our world and our earth. And when you take a look at what's happening to our earth, the animals on our earth, and even the abuses that happen between us as human beings one to another, you realize that the system is not working and we need to change it. It needs to transform. So a lot of the things that are going to happen in the world are for the purpose of changing and transforming this system that works for some people but doesn't work for the vast majority of people on this earth. So that has to change in order to move into this diversity and unity, equality, Aquarian age. So the whole sense of privilege is going to end too. And a lot of you know that some people are even born into privilege, like they deserve more than other people do just because of their family that they've been born into. You know how ridiculous that is. And that can't stay in the kind of world that we're developing. Now you might say to yourself, leave well enough alone. The world's not that terrible and I'm doing fine. But when you really look at what's going on and the nuclear weapons that are in this world and the hatreds that people have for one another, it's not a world that can continue forever. Those nuclear bombs were built and they're going to be used. That's just the way things are. When you build them, you're going to use them. So we need to change this world, get rid of these nuclear weapons, which are really easy for people to get right now. And when you add the nuclear weapons to the dog-eat-dog mentality that we have, where we don't trust people from other cultures and other countries, it's not viable long term. So we do need to change this world, and we're going to get help changing it over the next several months. So just be ready for big shifts, and be ready for great things happening too, because as this happens, we kind of wake up to how wonderful it is when we have people around us that we can connect with, and love opens up in our heart. We start seeing that there's a world we can build where we can feel good in it, where it's not just about meeting obligations and paying bills, but it's also about connections. This universe is naturally based on connections. Love and truth are what run the universe. And that you see when you begin to open up and let go of the programming that's otherwise. As you let go of the programming, you realize that everything is connected, that we live in a meaningful universe, and that love and truth are what run it. We need to transform in order as a collective for us to realize that that's the way the world is really run. And we're going to get help as things come down from the old system to be connected to this world that I'm talking about. So, moving into this autumn eclipse season, if you are a cardinal sign, so that's Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, you will be the most affected by the shifting winds. Since that first eclipse is on October 8th. And that's the one that will be a lunar eclipse full moon. And it will be a T-square, cardinal T-square, and it will have the powerful planets Uranus and Pluto within it. That's on October 8th. The second one will be on October 23rd. And that one will be a solar eclipse in Scorpio. So for that one, if you're a fixed sign, which is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you will be the most affected. It's at 0 degrees of Scorpio. That first one will be at 15 degrees of Moon in Aries and 15 degrees of Sun in Libra. That's what makes a full moon, is the Sun opposite the Moon. And then the T-square will have Uranus in Aries and Pluto in Capricorn. So that one will be strong. The second one will be strong too. And now to add to all this, Mercury goes retrograde on October 4th. So Mercury will be retrograde during the time of both eclipses, which means that things can be kind of confusing, and that your way of perceiving and seeing things and thinking could be shifting at the same time that things are getting more intense. So it's best to take the ride and not try to control everything with your ego or your mind, and to trust the movement to be for the best, because it is. And of course, you all know when Mercury is retrograde, the way that you see things is not the way that they are sometimes, because things are shifting with our mental plane and with our communication plane. People will come back from the past into our lives in reality or through dreams or memories. And sometimes we get faced with decisions we're supposed to make or contracts we're supposed to sign. It's best, if you can, to not make any huge decisions during Mercury retrograde or to sign any important contracts. Now, sometimes it's just the way things are, and so it's meant to be. But if you've got any control over the situation at all, don't make a huge decision. Don't sign a major contract during that time period. So the winds of the eclipse blow in at the autumn equinox on the 21st. There's then a new moon in Libra on the 23rd, 24th overnight. Pluto will be changing directions around that time. Then on October 4th, Mercury goes retrograde. on October 8th. The lunar eclipse that's got the T-square and Uranus and Pluto in it. And then on the 23rd, a solar eclipse in Scorpio. Very intense month. November, the intensity will begin to subside a little bit, but still be strong. And then in December, Uranus and Pluto make another exact aspect with one another toward the end. I think it's the 13th of December, I believe. And then that'll be the second to last time that Uranus and Pluto make the square to one another. Remember, it's 2012 through 2015. Then the last square they make with each other will be in March of 2015, right before another eclipse season and another T-square. One more thing I want to add is that Cardinal Grand Cross was right in the crosshairs of the United States sun from its natal birth chart of July 4th, 1776, which is a very valid chart, by the way. I and other astrologers have been tracking it, and events that happen are connected to that chart. Just like the 9/11 incident was very connected to the ascendant, the Sagittarian ascendant in that chart. So the Grand Cross was connected to the United States chart, its sun square Saturn in its natal chart. This T-square eclipse with Uranus and Pluto in it is right at the same place again. Right at the United States sun and Saturn, even closer to its Saturn. And then in the springtime, the last Uranus-Pluto square that'll be an eclipse season again will again be right at that United States Sun-Saturn configuration. So the changes in the United States are meant to be extremely strong over the next year. And that means that, in part, the fact that we've been used to being a superpower and thinking of ourselves as maybe better than other nations, a lot of that's going to shift if we're going to go into a world of equality. So the empire is not going to be the same as it was before. And we all have to be used to that. We all have to be used to, like, not thinking that other countries are inferior to us, but that we're all equal on this earth, because that's where we're all moving. So I look forward to this eclipse season. I hope you do too. And this is Leo Knight in Tellerico. I have a blog at www.spiritualtherapy.com. I think that'll be up at the end of this video. And I look forward to talking to you again as we get closer to that spring eclipse season. So thanks a lot. See you later.